we're bringing you all you need to succeed in the real estate business. It's Spilling the LT, brought to you by Lawyers Title, telling you what it's really like to work in real estate.
Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Tamera Gaede. Today, we're going to talk about how to build a successful Geo Farm. But first, if you like my content, you're really going to love my escrow team. So let's get a conversation going about your title needs. You can reach out to me on all of my social media platforms. Today's guest is Charlie Brown. He is the team lead of the Charlie Brown Group. He did in 2022 over $100 million in production while leading a 12-member team. And a significant focus of his business, while not the only one, is geo farming. So as the market has changed, a lot of realtors have come to me asking me, how do I farm a neighborhood? And so I wanted to have Charlie come in and really break apart how he tees up geo farming a neighborhood. So thank you for joining me today, Charlie.
Not a problem. I'm grateful to be here and love sharing this information with anyone who's willing to listen and apply it.
Well, I heard you speak at Michael's mastermind event, and you just didn't have enough time, right, to talk about the intricacies. It was very much a high level conversation, which we understand because it was a big event, right, with a lot of speakers. But I wanted you to come in and really let's see if we can unpack some of this a little bit. Okay, so let's start with my number one question: is what helped you get started in real estate? Let's set the stage.
You know, as a new agent, we all start from the same place. So I love telling people we're all starting from ground zero. Even though maybe someone's producing 10 million, 20 million, 100 million, we all started out at ground zero. And so one of the blessings in doing how I did it, and I didn't know, but I just had to scrap. I just had to go get business. And I think there's a lot of agents out there that feel that, like, whatever your level of desperation is, whatever your why is, it's got to be big enough to get you in gear. And so that was kind of what happened. I said, you know, I have got to get in gear. So I started doing everything that they tell you to do that works: door knocking, phone calling, volunteering to do open houses, and, you know, expires, FSBOs. And so what ended up happening over the course of, I would say, a year. And I think that's important for people to understand that, you know, real estate is not an overnight success game, but it is a pipeline game. And so I had to really run from the get-go. And it took about 6 to 9 months for that to really hit. But when I had an opportunity and I got my first listing from the door knocking, from the phone calling, and I went into a neighborhood, I said, okay, well, this is the neighborhood in which I have an opportunity now. And so I'm going to do the open house like every day. I got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the open house. I'm going to door knock. I'm going to phone call. And before I knew it, I had met the neighbors, and the neighbors needed to sell. And so then I did that exact same process all over again. I door knocked, I phone called, I did open houses. I started putting out 20, 30 open house signs. Hey, why not put out a mailer? I just sold this home. And so within a relatively short period of time, I had found that in one relatively small neighborhood, I had sold 50 homes. And I was a pretty young agent.
That's incredible.
It was awesome. It showed me the power, though, that number one, the basics work.
Yes.
And they always do.
Yes.
So for anyone out there, it's like, how do I go and get business tomorrow? You have to remember that it's going to be the proactive activities that are going to get you that business, even though we would all rather get business somehow through social media, and maybe we can do that. But if I need a listing tomorrow, I've got to somehow talk to people today. Right? Like physically talk to them in an engaging way. And the geo farming allowed that to happen. And then it just kind of snowballs. And before you know it, you're the neighborhood realtor, or you have influence, or you just have the ability to provide value to an entire community, and they see you as a resource.
Okay, so you said so many things in there that are really, really important. I think the number one thing that I want to emphasize is you said you have to be consistent, and it's going to take about 9 months for it to pay off. It's a longer game, right? It's not necessarily, you may get a listing sooner than that, but you need to prepare your time to be a 9-month game plan. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, I would say that's accurate. You know, I told myself when I got into the industry, I think that every agent should do this. You got to give yourself enough time to be successful.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people that maybe had the skill set, but they didn't give themselves enough time. Right. So, I wanted to bail on real estate with about month 6 to 7, and I tried and it didn't quite work out. But then I kind of, shook my head and said, no, I told myself a year, and I'm glad I did, because by the end of that year, things were going great. But the first 9 months were pretty shaky. And I had a lot of people depending on me to make it work. So failure wasn't an option, which is what allowed me, I think, or really pushed me and motivated me to make sure that I was doing the activities that would give me the best odds of getting business.
Part of my real estate career has been a short stint as a recruiter for a broker. And all of these new agents would come in after going to Champions, getting their real estate license. They're super excited. And I would ask them the question, how many months worth of savings do you have?
Yep. Every time I interview somebody, I ask the same question.
How much savings do you have? Because you need at least 6 months, more 9 to 12 when you're starting out, right?
Correct. And I tell people all the time, I say, if you're wondering how you're buying groceries next month,
correct,
this might be difficult for you.
And so laying that groundwork, and we're going to talk about what the groundwork is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I really want to emphasize to anyone wanting to start a farm, a geo farm in a neighborhood, is that you have to be consistent, and it's going to take a minute for it to pay off.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot emphasize that enough. So now that we know that we have to be consistent, it's going to take a minute. The first thing you need to do is pick a neighborhood. So what do you look for in the right neighborhood?
I think it's really important that you start where you're most comfortable. Right? Because that's where you're going to be able to relate to the people. Don't go over to town over because the price points might be higher, because you're not probably in their circles. You're not going to their grocery stores. You're not going to their schools. Your kids aren't there. You're not, whatever it is. So you always want to go where you can speak the language of the people.
Sure.
Right? And you can say, I'm a part of this. We are a part of this. And you're going to be able to relate with them a whole lot better. So that would be my first thing, is go where it makes the most sense,
yes.
Right? If my farm neighborhood, it should be your own neighborhood. If you live in a neighborhood,
you should start in your own
that's
backyard.
Where you should start.
Yeah.
Now if you happen to get a listing, maybe at the neighborhood next to you, great. That's just as fine.
Perfect.
So I literally have become a top agent in my zip code, and have been for almost my entire career, because I kind of just focused and honed in on that zip code. And there's still so much more business I could do there, but I just kind of grew where I was planted. And that just makes the most sense.
I agree. Let me ask you this. Do you look in the neighborhood to see how many realtors live there?
I don't. But if I wanted to give a piece of advice, though, there actually are some tricks to the trade. You do want to see what the turnover rate is, right?
Oh, for sure.
You want to see what percentage of the homes in the neighborhood are hitting the market annually, right?
Is it actively moving?
Is it moving? That's right. Some neighborhoods barely have any movement. They're very established, and there's just almost no movement. So you want to see that there's at least probably about a 5 to 6%, somewhere around that number. It doesn't have to be that number, but you don't want to see only 1%. If there's 500 homes in a neighborhood, you don't want to see that only 1% of them are hitting the market every year. Your odds of really capitalizing on that opportunity aren't going to be great.
I have a walking farm app. I'll have to show it to you. And you can just draw a little circle and it'll calculate your turnover rate like that.
Yes, I have used the lawyer's title walking farm app.
Okay.
And it is cool.
Okay. I think, one of the things, because I live, play mostly in the Frisco area, right? And so I have realtors come to me and they're like, I want to farm the Tribute. Do you know, I don't know if you know what the Tribute is.
I don't come over that.
It's like, how many realtors live in the Tribute? I just think sometimes you do need to, I go where my competition isn't, right?
Correct.
I try to find ways to work smarter, not harder. And if you're looking, I think it is important to look at a neighborhood, not necessarily to worry about how many realtors live there, but who are the dominant players. And you can drive the neighborhood and look for listing signs. You'll be able to tell, right? And so I think that is also, to me, I think it's something to consider. It may not be something that you consider, but we've got some neighborhoods out in the north area that are saturated with very established realtors. Yeah. And so I think it's something to look at.
There are cities like that are harder to break into. One of the interesting things, I'll just take 2 seconds to say this, is that, but don't sell yourself short on that, because a lot of agents, even if they're established, because they're established, stop doing the activities.
You're not wrong about that.
And I can't tell you how many times I have seen agents lose their market share because they start assuming that they have all the business, and then all of a sudden someone else comes in who's hungrier than they are and is willing to out hustle them. And before you know it, all it takes is 1, 2, 3, and now you got a new player in the game if that person is smart, because all they have to do is play the geofarming game correctly, and they start to take over your market share simply because they out hustled you.
That is an excellent counterpoint. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Let me ask you, where do you get your lists of owner information for the neighborhood?
Yeah, so there's so many great ways. Obviously, the MLS and Realist Tax. You can get into there. You can look up a subdivision in the tax records and say how many homes are in this subdivision. I just search by subdivision and I'll type in a subdivision and it'll say, oh, there's 650 homes in this subdivision. And then I can go back and look and say, well, okay, how many solds have there been over the last year? So that'll help me kind of determine, is there activity?
Okay.
You can use Remine. You can use there's all kinds of tax sources.
I like Remine.
Lots of times the title companies have access to different tools and resources. They're all kind of the same though, right?
Sure.
You can pull data from lots of places. So if I'm just looking for straight addresses and numbers, honestly, our own tax records that we have as agents can provide you everything you need.
Okay.
You can technically export up to 7,500 a month as an agent, 7,500 names and numbers from the tax records.
Oh, you can?
You can.
Wow.
So it has a limit of 7,500, but you can pull that many if you're
That's
looking
a lot.
it's a lot. Looking to do a list for any particular purpose. And like you said, there's apps out there that you can be walking around and it's kind of like a mini tax record on your app. It's telling you, oh, this person bought this home in 2019 for this amount. And it's you can see all the information.
It's all public records.
It's all right there. How much they financed. And so I can be like, oh, this person bought this home 5 years ago and they probably don't owe a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
So
what
that's
is the likelihood that they'll move, right? It's
that's
a score.
Right.
It gives them a score of how likely they are to move based on equity and length of time in the home and
that's
other
right.
predicted
and
analytics.
we do phone calling around all these geo farms.
Okay, wait. How do you get?
Okay,
because a lot of these farming software, they don't come with email and phone number.
Correct.
So how do you get email and phone number? That's a big question for realtors.
Yeah, there's some great systems out there. I know a popular one is Mojo, Vulcan 7. RedX. And so those are some of the more popular ones. But, those systems, because so much is public information, those companies have just done a phenomenal job of putting it all together. And this is what I always tell people. People are always asking me, how do I spend my money? Should I go buy flyers? Should I go do this? And I'm like, if you're starting out or if you don't have a lot of money, spend your money in something that gives you control of your destiny.
Okay.
Right. So I'm going to go and I would pay all day long for a service that provides me all of this information versus sending out 500 flyers, because I have no control of what happens with those 500 flyers. But I got control all day long of how many people I want to call.
Excellent point.
And so I can circle my farm area or any area. It's going to give me all the information, phone numbers, emails if they're listed. And it does a great job. You can even get it to where you say, I only want to see numbers of people that have lived in the home for X amount of time. So they've done a really good job, these systems have, of trying to help you narrow down your audience. I only want to see investors. I only want to see whatever it is.
That's cool.
And it'll pull out a call list for you.
Yeah, we have farming tools too, and they claim to have phone numbers, and we've tried it, but it's not.
Yeah, some of them are good. They'll pull home numbers. I mean, some of them pull up to 4 or 5 phone numbers for a registered home. Doesn't mean it's always accurate, but it does have.
You still got to do the legwork.
You still got to call, but
I think that's a great resource. That's one of the things, the questions I always get is, where do you get phone numbers and emails? So thank you for answering that. Okay. So you've picked your neighborhood. Now what? We're going to discuss the ground game approach, which was something we talked about yesterday. Okay. So, and emphasize that this is where that work comes in, of being consistent and doing the work. So let's break apart the ground game approach.
Yep. And I think this is super important because most people want to break into a farm simply through marketing, which we'll talk about. But it's really, I would say, ground game first. The ground game is the more important thing because we say this is a relationship-based business, right? Marketing is really not relationship-based. It's more branding-based. Who am I? Can I brainwash people? Marketing by itself is very hard to do that unless you have an enormous budget and it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. So most people don't have that type of money just to try to brainwash an entire community.
Sure.
So by getting out there and doing the ground game, you are becoming relevant. You're trying to provide value. You go to your neighborhood. You could do anything from pop buys to, this is a market analysis of what's going on in our neighborhood, to I'm inviting you to an open house. So really door knocking, phone calling, doing community events, showing up and figuring out how you can volunteer within the schools and the local organizations within that community. You show up to those things. You show up to the HOA meetings. Most of these communities have Facebook pages. Show up on those Facebook pages and contribute, versus just showing up and, hey, I'm the realtor.
I'm your realtor.
I'm your realtor. Like, use me, if anyone's needing to buy or sell, I mean, that's what everybody would do. And it's the most basic of garbage Facebook, right?
Sure.
Or garbage advertising. There's no value to it. But the ground game, the great thing about it, love it or hate it, is it works every single time.
Every single time.
Every single time. You can door knock. People are going to answer their doors and you're going to talk to them. You got to show up like a professional. When you are doing the ground game, you got to show up how you want the neighborhood to perceive you. Right. So I'm always going to show up as a professional. So I don't want them to mistake me for the local pest control person or roofer knocking their door.
Do you show up in a suit?
I'm going to show up like this. I know.
You are?
I
okay.
am. Yeah.
All right. I like it. Because that was one of my questions, when you do the door knocking, what are the keys? And you said, don't look like a salesperson and provide an item of value, right?
Yeah. Provide an item of value. And people are like, what is that? You don't have to spend money on anything. An item of value can simply be educational value.
Yeah.
Right. We're not there to sell them on something. And that's where I think so much of this is mindset. People are afraid to knock. They're afraid to call. And I heard something great last month. And they said, when you're afraid to lead generate, it's usually not that you are call deficient or door knocking deficient. You're value deficient.
Yeah. Okay.
Meaning that you would do those things if you felt like you had something valuable to share with them or something valuable to offer. And that's honestly how I do approach it. Hey, I don't know if you're looking to sell or buy, but if you do, I can promise you're going to want this information that I have for you and it's going to be valuable to you. You're going to want to know that this time of year is probably the best time of every single year to buy a home because of these statistics that I wanted to share with you.
Okay.
Right. And that's valuable to the right person.
So you've pulled your list. You have your list of the people inside the neighborhood that are most likely to sell. So you're going to go door knock on those doors with this statistical information.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you use different items of value for different people in the neighborhood?
You can.
Does that make sense what I'm asking? Like, for an example, I live in a new construction neighborhood. So I would think that realtors that are in my neighborhood would take a little basket to the newest homeowner and say, here's a list of referrals you'll need for the neighborhood, like pest control, lawn service, blah, blah, blah. That's a way to establish a relationship. Correct. Now, of course, they just bought a house, so they're not likely to sell, but not everything is a sale today, right? You're establishing the relationship for the long game. So do you provide different things because you mentioned pop buys too.
Correct. So you're going to want to get, depending on how the size of your neighborhood, right? So I lived in a very large neighborhood. That's one of these master planned communities. And so I had to pick and say, well, it was almost like little mini subdivisions within subdivisions.
Yeah.
Within a larger subdivision. So I said, well, I can't pop by my entire subdivision because that would just be outrageously expensive. And I couldn't possibly do it. I don't have enough manpower. But I could probably get the 60 homes that are right next to me in my pocket.
Okay.
That's simple to do.
Yeah.
And so can I come up with, and it's the fall. We're coming up on the fall right now, right? This is like, the easiest time for pop buys. There's just a million pop buy ideas.
Pumpkin things out there, folks.
Pumpkins and soaps and candles and Christmas. My goodness, like this is pop buy heaven right now. And it doesn't have to be elaborate, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's Halloween. What do we do for Halloween? We eat candy. You can get candy, make something. My name's Charlie Brown at Valentine's. That's a benefit I have, but I mean, there's like Charlie Brown paraphernalia everywhere. For Valentine's, they make them in the little heart boxes. So we'll go buy those candies and put our little cards on them and drop them off at doors. And it's not 100 degrees, so they're not going to melt. But so pop buys are valuable because you want to establish, nothing makes you more upset when you see that there's a sign in your neighbor's yard.
No kidding.
And you're like, why didn't I get that?
Yeah.
But you can be upset and throw your tantrum, which we all do. But then the next question should be, why didn't I get it? Like it's your fault. Why didn't they call you? Well, because how did they know to call you? So that's where I think the pop buys to a very hyper local area is super effective. So if you have a smaller community, then yeah, do the pop buys once a quarter, or you can say, I'm going to do a smaller bunch of 30, 40, 50 homes every month. The great thing about this is you can start small and scale it.
Yeah. I mean, a starting pop buy would cost $5.
Tops.
Okay.
Yep. Tops $5. You can do them for less. You really can. You can do them for probably $2.50, $3.
Look, all you have to do is Google pop buys and you'll come up with
100
ideas. Brian Buffini's got a whole list of them too.
That's right. I know people that make them look decent and they just go to the dollar store and go to town.
I know. Sometimes I see I'm like, that was cute. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we've taken our neighborhood, let's say 500 homes. I don't know. And you've broken it apart. The number doesn't matter. We've broken it apart into these little mini subdivisions, like you said. You've got your list of people that are most likely to sell. You've got the 16 or 17 homes just right around you that you want to hyper focus on. What else do you do? Okay. And I would assume you take advantage of open houses in the neighborhood, right? What else do you do in the neighborhood to keep establishing yourself? That we have a list of things. You have to have a reason for calling a door knocking, invite them to the open house. The just went under contract, just sold. So let's talk about breaking apart some of those steps.
Kind of the process of growing the farm. Yeah, because you do all of the legwork because you're hoping to get business. That's what we're all aiming for, right? But that one piece of business that you eventually do get, and you will get it if you do the work, that's your leverage. It's like once you have that, that is your trampoline, your catapult, right? Yeah,
we talked about that. And that's where I was going with this.
That's one of the most important things. So once you get that opportunity, you have to leverage it. And that's why they say, you always are lead generating for listings, because listings have the opportunity for you to be relevant in a way that nothing else is. When I have a listing, I could do an open house on that listing every single day. I can call around it, I can door knock around it, and I can say, this is my listing. And I immediately have a sense of confidence and relevance when I'm doing this geo-farming activities. And when I do those open houses and people come in, it just yields a lot more business. So here's the great thing if you think about it to a geo farm. If I got a listing, I'm going to door knock around it. I'm going to phone call around it. I'm going to get onto whatever social media pages this community is a part of, and I'm going to advertise it. I'm going to do my open house. Now, when I do my open house, you can do a passive open house or a proactive open house.
What's the difference? Explain.
Because a passive open houses by nature, I consider a passive activity, meaning that you have no control of the outcome. You could set at an open house for 4 hours and have nobody show up. It's really not your fault to a full degree.
Sure.
So if I want to make my open house a proactive activity, I've got to do these activities around it to get something out of it.
What do you mean you don't just put a sign out front and show up with some cookies?
That's right. One sign isn't going to do it. So we tend to put out 20 to 30 signs. Now I say that saying, be familiar.
That was interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because I have not seen anyone put out that amount of signs before.
Yep. And it became a very popular thing where we live. So much so that we almost had to start scaling it back.
What do you mean?
Other realtors saw that we were doing it, and so they just tried to match it. And so we would wake up on a Saturday morning and there'd be like,
oh no,
300 open house signs. It became like a one-up game. It's like Charlie put out 30, I'm going to put out 40. And then the next guy's going to put out 50. And before you knew it, it was a circus of signs. Circus. So
I just have this picture in my head of just signs on top of signs.
it was ridiculous.
Okay.
So, but we still put out, I'd say between 20 to 30. And this serves multiple purposes, guys.
Okay, explain.
Is that number one, it's branding. Don't just go buy the red open house signs. If you had to spend money somewhere, spend them on branded stuff, because you want people to start seeing you and getting familiar with your logo, with your name.
That's a great golden nugget.
That's right.
Because I see just those little open house with the arrow, and there's no branding on it whatsoever.
And so by the time I have 30 of these through a neighborhood, they're seeing them at all the intersections. I might only be doing one open house, but imagine if I did that open house 2 times a week, 3 times a week. They're seeing those signs, 30 of them every single time. You do that for a couple of months. Once you start getting traction, before you know it, they think you own the neighborhood simply from a branding perspective.
So you would do an open house 2 to 3 times, the same house.
You can, yeah. Mm-hmm.
2 to 3 times a week.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times I only see them, it's open on the weekend.
Open on a weekend.
So you do it during the week.
Mm-hmm.
What's your optimum time during the week?
3 to 6.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And on the weekend? Saturday, Sunday, Saturday and or Sunday.
We usually do them anytime between 12 and 4.
Okay.
right? That's our typical time frame. And so if you do all those activities, what's going to happen is ultimately you're going to get more business because you're doing the proactive activities around the open house. But once we sell that home, we're going to send out a flyer.
Yep.
Now our CRM has the ability to send out now there's lots of software that you can just plug into, but it's all pretty automated stuff, but our CRM allows us to create the content and mail it out to our designated area that we choose.
Are you talking about just sold postcard?
Yeah,
Okay.
Under contract, just sold, whatever, but we do it for under contract.
Yeah, that's interesting too.
So as soon as the home goes under contract, we're going to send out a postcard. Now at this point, we've door knocked, we've phone called, we've open housed, and now they're going to get a postcard. And then when it sells, we're going to send over a handwritten letter.
Okay, explain the handwritten letter, because I think I've only received one handwritten letter from a realtor that was doing an open house in a neighborhood that I've lived in my entire life.
Okay.
And it had an impact. I actually went over to my neighbor's house and I said, look what your realtor sent me. This is impressive. It made an impact. I kept it.
And you got it. You opened it or you looked at it.
I did look at it because it was hand addressed.
That's right.
I thought it was
hand addressed, hand stamped, hand signed. And we'll send them out once again to that same farm area. So now they've heard from us 5 to 6 times. And we send that letter out and it's very simple. And we're just fishing. We're fishing for the people that are interested. So if I have anything, even if I don't, but ideally, hopefully we have something positive to say about our listing. It sold in the first week. It sold in the first weekend. We got multiple offers. We sold for 5% over asking price, or we sold for 100% of asking price. Come up with a reason.
Yeah, this is the verbiage for the handwritten letter.
Yeah, hey, we just sold your neighbor's home at 123 Main Street and we had 3 offers on it. There are still people looking in the neighborhood that we would love to help them find a home. If you're interested in selling, please give us a call at blah, 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 blah.
Perfect.
And
Love it.
People call us.
Love it.
And this is one of those things that, I'm sharing this. It was really interesting. We're not looking to recreate the wheel, guys. I didn't come up with this. Anything that you ever hear has probably been created and done by somebody else at a very high level.
Plagiarize all the time.
And so this is our business. And the reality is I had heard about this and I was like, well, why not? So going back to my scaling is that we started this on a small scale and we saw results instantly. First batch we sent out, we got calls. I had listings within 2 months
of
doing this
That's
letter.
Incredible.
Right?
The handwritten letter.
The handwritten letter program.
That seems to me like the biggest golden nugget out of, you have to do all these other things. I'm not saying
there's no shortcut.
I'm not saying that the other things are not as important.
Yeah.
But I think that's where you really just set yourself apart.
Correct. And so the letter thing, it's one more touch, but it adds a lot of validity to who you are. And you do start to kind of brainwash the community because they've now heard from us 6 times and maybe only on one home.
Yeah.
So say that I get a second home and I do the same 6 activities. Now they now heard from me 12 times. What happens when you've done 5 or 6 homes in a year? They've heard from you 30 to 40 times. And before you know it, they're just like, oh my gosh, this person they just do the business.
Yeah.
And some of them get annoyed.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, I don't want to see any more of your materials. But that tells us it's working.
I was going to ask you that. I took that question off, but it's like, what happens when people tell you you're bucking up too much?
If you have your GeoFarm in your database to some degree, you do have some control of, if I'm sending this to the same neighborhood, I probably have that neighborhood in like some sort of Excel spreadsheet. So I might go in there and scrub it.
Off. Yeah.
So we do scrub. That is an important question that I think we talked about briefly before.
Especially on the do not call list.
When you're making those calls, what's nice is that most systems do have a scrub the do not call list, which you're going to want to do. But in terms of sending out letters, there's not really like a do not mail list. It's just this is where they go. So it's a little bit harder when people call me and say, don't send me mail. I'm like, do you literally call every person that sends you junk mail to tell them don't send you junk mail? Like,
do you have people call you and ask you that?
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm like, well,
there's some people with some time on their hands.
Yeah, so if we can, we try to accommodate that, but it is a little bit harder. But phone calling, you can definitely control it, and that's the one where sometimes people can call you out on that. But I will door knock everything.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about being afraid to door knock. Once again, you're not selling something. You're not knocking on their door saying, buy this from me, but you are literally inviting them to something. You're offering value. So the no soliciting, quite frankly, doesn't really bother me because I'm not soliciting. And I've been doing this for 13 years. I mean, almost never. I've never had a super negative experience at a door. Sure, you're going to get your grumpy people that don't want to answer and don't want to talk, but that's no different than anything else.
Right.
Right. So I'll take that all day long. I'll knock 100 doors and talk to 50 people and maybe only have 2 that were semi-rude. Most people are pretty polite because you're polite. As long as you're polite and you look professional, they treat you differently.
Okay. Okay. So we've talked about the ground game.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you need to add for the ground game? Because but I want to get to marketing and community events. So I want to make sure.
Yeah, no, the ground game is really important. And I think that's really your foundation, because then everything else really supplements it. And that's when you can see a big return, is when you got the ground game going and now you can add these other components.
Important to say. Okay. So let's discuss how you market the neighborhood and give to the community. And how that goes hand in hand with the ground game, right?
Well, and we talked about some of the marketing. I would consider things like flyers marketing, but it works when it's complemented by the other things. Because that's the thing. Remember that they've already seen your name 5 to 6 times. So when they get that mailer, there's some association with, maybe it is junk mail, but it's okay because it's just one more touch. But if it's my only touch, that's where agents make a huge mistake. They just send mailers. Mm-hmm. So if someone gets your mailer once a month, that's not enough, because you have no true value to the community yet. You're just another mailer.
Right.
But when they've seen my name and my brand 100 times, sure, maybe they throw it away. But at that point, I am somewhat integrating into their mindset to where hopefully when they think, oh, I need a real estate agent, I'm the first person they think of. And that's the goal there. So with the marketing specific, you can do, we've done everything from newsletters. We've hopped into, a lot of neighborhoods do have like their own monthly magazine. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you can hop into their monthly magazines and advertise. Of course, you can do targeted social media marketing into a specific Geo Farm area. So there's a lot that you can do, but from a marketing standpoint, it usually is pretty simple to, when you send out flyers, make sure that you are, again, trying to provide value. Make sure there's a call to action, and try to have it to, why are they going to pick up the phone and call me? If it says just sold, I'm not sure that's even the best message. It's got to be, hey, we got 4 offers on this property, sold it for 115% of asking price. We could do the same for you. Something that's a little bit better.
Big golden. I mean, there's so many golden nuggets in this. That's another one, is having a call to action on the postcard. It isn't just sold, but it's like, we had multiple offers. So my team still has buyers looking in the area. Are you trying to sell your house? Please call me. Right?
Correct.
I mean, it is making that connection. I'm a big believer in making connections so that we all have the opportunity to grow together, right? Do more business. And I think that's what makes this different, is it's not just, oh, look at what the house I sold. It's, I want you to be successful. Everyone needs to be successful here, right? And what is your goal? Are you trying to sell a house, right? Here's what I have in my repertoire to help you do that. That's at a different level than everyone else.
What's your program? What's your value proposition?
Yes.
You want them to see that. That's why those, hey, we'll buy your home in 90 days, if it's not sold, these guarantee sale programs, they've been around for 40 years, but they still work today because it's a program. So programs work. So try to have a program that you can market. That's a whole nother topic. But in terms of the marketing, and once you're in a community, try to get involved in the community. And that's really important for them to see that you're doing things for the community. So there's, we will put on events. Number one, we'll put on events and we'll join events that they are already doing.
And look, not everything that you do that we talked about costs a ton of money.
No.
And so I think that's really important. That's another golden nugget, is you can do a lot of these community events or these marketing efforts without a lot of money.
Events are my favorite thing to do.
Okay, so let's talk about events.
Because if you can do an event, obviously you got people coming to you.
Sure.
Right. And that's the beauty of an event. I can plant myself in one spot and have 100 people come to me. So you're right. Sometimes I will get like your snow cone truck, Kona Ice. Hey, we're going to have Kona Ice out here, and just come between 12 and 2, meet me, have a snow cone on me. But the most important thing with any event that you do is you want to make sure that you have something that they are filling out, signing in. Yeah. So not only do we always have an event, but we always have a giveaway associated with the event.
Okay.
Because that's really important. Otherwise, I'm just meeting 100 people.
Sure.
And yeah, maybe they like me and they think that's really cool that Charlie did this, but I have no way to take control of the relationship.
Yeah,
So
you got to capture their info.
Have power. You want to give yourself some power. So we'll always have a giveaway. It could be a basket. It could be, for Christmas, I buy 100 gingerbread houses. I'm the first person to Target when these things go on sale. And we buy 100 gingerbread houses, and I've done this for 3 years now. And we show up at one of our community parks right by the school, and we're just there till those 100 are gone. And people love it. They come, they send me pictures of it, they post it, and all you got to do is come and fill out my sign-in sheet to get your free gingerbread house. But who doesn't love putting gingerbread houses together at Christmas time? So,
and those are not expensive.
They're not. And so the beauty in this is on that sign-in sheet, it does kind of have give me your information and would you like information about your home? And the magic in this is inevitably, if I have 100 people sign in, I can promise you I have at least 10 to 15 that have circled something about, yes, I want more information about something, right? So that's a good ROI. If I spend $1,000 on gingerbread houses, which might sound like a lot for gingerbread houses, but if I spend $1,000 on gingerbread houses and I have a potential of just call even 3 closings over those 100 that signed in, I can guarantee you I get 1 closing, but I'll probably get more than that. 2, 3. I mean, my ROI is huge at that point. Right?
But let's be clear. Excuse me. You've laid the groundwork with your ground game before you get to.
That's right.
Don't skip ahead to community events because they're fun. Okay?
That's right. They are fun. Now, on that note, lots of times, especially this time of year, communities are hosting their own events and they need vendors. So if I'm an agent out there, that's a golden opportunity because the only money you really need to spend would be on what you're giving away at the events, right? And so we always have something of value, especially for the kids, but we want to have something for the kids and for the adults to stay, to sign in for our raffle. So we have all kinds of fun things, but we have a tent. So, okay, there's our investment. I spent money on a tent. We got our table, and then lots of times we'll partner with our vendor partners, quite frankly, on the prizes and the giveaways, right? So the cost is very low. It's almost nothing for me to sign up and go host an event at this point.
Even though I don't, it may feel a little elementary, but you've captured those leads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then what?
Yeah, it really isn't elementary because the funny thing is,
that's where I'm going with this.
The funny thing is, I sat on some panels with some agents that do a lot of business, way more than I do. And one of the questions that lots of we get asked at the end is, okay, what's a big mistake you've made, or what's one thing that you would change in your business if you were talking to an audience of people that are getting started or whatever, looking to improve. And I would say one of the most consistent things I hear is that we fail to manage our database.
Yep.
I think that's probably, I have lost well over $1 million by lack of managing my database. And it's just a matter of how long does it take us to realize that pain of, oh my gosh, like there's just money free flowing out of my hands and it's my fault. So you have to have a CRM to capture these people. So we have these sign-in sheets. And if you're not going to be the one to do it, then pay somebody to do it. How much it cost you $50 to have somebody enter 100 sheets into your CRM.
Was it Fervor or something? Where
you can hire that's right. You can hire virtual help. You can do so many things. But to do the work and not follow up with the people is one of the single biggest mistakes we make. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I refuse to talk about CRMs because if you don't have a CRM, then.
Yeah, you've got to have a CRM. And I tell people, Excel is not a CRM, right?
You are not wrong.
Excel is not a CRM.
When you're very first starting out and you don't have a lot of money and your broker may not have one, maybe that's a good place to start, but start.
Yeah.
Okay. And you need to graduate to an actual functioning CRM pretty quickly. But, I mean, that's just, these are such basics of real estate, right? And it's so interesting to me when I talk to people who don't, I mean, they're realtors that don't have a CRM. And I'm like, well, that's where we can start. But I don't have a lot of those conversations anymore just because I just think that's the basic of sales, right? And if you're not going to leverage your CRM, then it's going to be very difficult to be successful.
And a good CRM, since we're on the topic, but it should remind you, it should have automation built into it. It should allow you to build a relationship and communicate with your clients very well. So if it doesn't do all those things, then you probably have the wrong CRM.
Which one do you use?
We use Brivity.
Okay.
And now we've used Follow Up Boss. We've used, Command at Keller Williams. So, and they all have awesome things to them, right? So just find the one that kind of works for you and what you're looking for. But that's a phenomenal example of if I have a little bit of money to spend, where do I spend it? CRM would be a much wiser use than most things that people. I mean, you're talking like $100, $150 a month for most CRMs as an individual user. As a team user, I got to pay more, but even then it's not that much.
And once you get a CRM, you have to actually use it, or else there's no point in spending that $150. Okay, I don't want to run out of time here because I want to talk about the golden letter, because I really thought that was a big item of value to leave with the audience as well. So do you mind telling us about the golden letter?
Yeah, the golden letter is, once again, not something that we came up with, but it is something that has worked for us very well. And that's This can be farming and it can leave farming, right? It doesn't have to be with farming. And so we'll leave the topic a little bit here of geo farming, because the golden letter just seems to work everywhere. It's going back to the basics. People tend to open envelopes that look like they're hand addressed. And, our golden letter is simply a letter that states we will send it out to an area. We'll define what area we want. Now, ideally, I will say this, ideally, you do have a buyer looking in a particular area. But if you meet anybody, even at an open house, that says, I'm looking for a home that fits this criteria in this area, right? Let's start there. And I can say, great, I'm going to send out a letter to this community, to this area. Maybe it's 500 homes. And I'm just going to say, I have a buyer who's interested in buying in this area. There's nothing on the market that fits their criteria right now. Basically, give me a call if you're interested in hearing more, or if you're interested in selling. And it's so simple. And people call us all the time for multiple reasons. Sometimes they actually are like, I hear this all the time. They're like, wow, your timing is so crazy. I was just thinking that I needed to sell. I got a call last week. I had to relocate, and your letter came at just the right time. I hear this every week. And so that's why sending the stuff out matters, because you never know when you're going to hit the right person. And so we send this letter out. And once again, the ROI has been astronomical. And we have found people that are, for all kinds of reasons. And sometimes it's a lot of off-market stuff. They're calling me saying, can you sell my home off market? Well, maybe I can. Tell me a little bit about your situation. What do we need to do? So we have been able to sell a lot of homes off market, depending on where you're at in your business and who you can plug into, even within your own office. We'll meet people who say, I'm willing to sell, but it has to be off market. I'm willing to sell, but it has to be a cash offer, and I need to sell in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Now you can start plugging into like, who's your investor network? Are you an investor? And we've flipped 3 homes this year just from this, and made a very good profit. But it was a win-win.
For sure.
It was a win-win. We're not taking advantage of anyone as an agent. We have to tell people, you could sell your home for this, or we could go this route. And there's plenty of iBuyer programs out there. Most of the time, we're really doing nothing more than matching the iBuyer program and then just offering maybe a little bit more, plus a much better service experience. Oh, you need to stay in the home for a month? No problem. I don't care, right? You're not going to get that from a big company. So, the golden letter, we started out by just doing, I think, maybe a few hundred. And now we're sending out probably 7,000 to 8,000 a month.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And so it's become
wow.
In less than 2 years, it's become one of our 5 leading sources of business. It worked instantly.
That is incredible. And you're right. It doesn't necessarily have much always to do with geo farming, but I think it was something unique that I hadn't really heard much about before. So I really thought that was something
it's 2 sentences, guys. It's like, we have a buyer who's interested. Are you interested in selling? Mm-hmm. And because it is kind of a form feed, it has their name, their information. So it's easy to do. We don't handwrite that. That part's typed, but we hand sign it. We hand address the envelope. We have a real stamp on it. It's not some automated stamp. And those are some of the tricks to the trade on getting people to open your letters. I had one of these appointments last night, and he literally said, I throw away all junk mail, but yours looked like a real letter. So I opened it, and there I was in his house talking to him about how he had a relationship with an agent who he was going to list with. But if I could offer him this particular scenario, he would go with me. And I think we'll probably be able to offer it to him. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So it just works. All these things work, but we send them out monthly. Some months are better than others. You can't quit just because you have a bad door, a bad phone call, a bad month of sending anything out. So as we started with, consistency is the key on everything. I don't care what you're doing. You've got to give it all in for at least at least probably 4 to 6 months before you start seeing a return on your efforts. Now, things will come to you quicker, but give yourself 6 months to make sure you've gotten your ground game running.
Well, and I love that we started with that and we're ending with that, right? Yeah. Be consistent, be patient, keep doing what you're doing, keep your plan in place, and then understand that it's going to be a minute before you see the bigger payoff, right?
Yep.
So I think that's a great place to stop for today. Thank you, Charlie, for being my guest on my podcast.
Problem. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I actually learned some new things today, so I appreciate that very much. That's another episode. Again, I'm your host, Tamera Gaede. If you like my content, you're really going to love my escrow team. So give me an opportunity to talk to you about your title needs and make it a great day.